Number 10. The Flower Cartel. This one might be lesser known as they are relatively new. Not just an enemy to Wolverine either, but an enemy to likely all of mutant kind and the mutant nation of Krakoa. The Flower Cartel are a group responsible for smuggling the Krakoan miracle flowers, which mutants use to create medicinal drugs for the world in exchange for the global acknowledgement, rights, and respect of their mutant nation. They don't just steal these flowers, but have been using them to create recreational, potent, hallucinogenic drugs. The drugs they've created are so powerful that they often cause the death of users, and may even be affiliated with mind control or possession of those exposed to the drug. We're not really sure yet. In Wolverine's newest series, he teams up with CIA agent Jeff Bannister to try and find out who exactly is behind the Flower Cartel's criminal activities. Number 9. Hobgoblin. I think we all know Hobgoblin fairly well, if you're a Spider-Man fan that is, but did you know that he also tussled with Wolverine and the X-Men? This altercation went down in the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, where actually Mark Hamill himself voiced Hobgoblin. We see Wolverine, the X-Men, and Spider-Man forced to deal with Hobgoblin in the season 2 episode titled Mutants Revenge, which is a crossover episode with the 90s X-Men animated series. Yay, I love crossovers. After Beast is kidnapped, the X-Men go out looking for him, which leads them to team up with Spider-Man, who is also looking for Hank. But Wolverine doesn't like Spider-Man, and while these two fight one another, Hobgoblin also sees this as a unique opportunity to attack all of the above parties, causing grief for Wolverine while he attempts to rescue Beast from Dr. Herbert Landon, who also is another random, lesser known enemy of Wolverine's, in that episode anyways. Number 8. The Savage Land Mutates. When it comes to other mutant and even mutate groups outside of the X-Men, people are not always as knowledgeable. If you are just discovering mutant kind now, you may not know many other mutant groups outside of the X-Men, and there's sometimes a villainous counterpart, often led by Magneto, the Brotherhood of Mutants, or the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But there are actually a lot more groups than just these two. There are the Morlocks, who often live in the sewers, and there are the Savage Land Mutates, who generally work with Sauron and are, you guessed it, from the Savage Lands. Mutates are like mutants, but the difference is generally that they weren't born with natural abilities which later activated, or natural mutations, but instead they evolved to become mutated, gaining powers or a physical mutation. The Savage Land Mutates are occasionally enemies of the X-Men and by extension Wolverine, who is a member of the heroic mutant team. They even pop up in the 1988 run of Wolverine in issue 69, where Wolverine knocks a lot of them down in order to get to Sauron. Number 7. The Collector. While some may now be more familiar with the character of the Collector himself, thanks to the Guardians of the Galaxy Marvel Cinematic Universe films, fans may not know that he and Wolverine actually had some pretty big beef. What happened between these two? Well, Wolverine basically freed thousands of people from a planet where the Collector had them imprisoned. You see, these people were the survivors of planets that Galactus had destroyed, whom the Collector had, well, collected. But you know, to these people, they were being held against their will, as prisoners, on a shielded planet. A character named Arya, who kind of looks like a space elf, reaches out to Wolverine, seeking his help to free these people, and he answers her plea, getting into a direct conflict with the Collector later on in this story arc known as The Great Escape, part of the 1988 Wolverine series. Basically, if you want lots of random stories, you need to read the 1988 Wolverine series. Number 6. The Iron Monk. The Iron Monk appears to be a villain sent after Wolverine by the Hand while Logan is being held in prison in issue 108 of the Wolverine series that started in 1988. He proves to be a formidable foe and gives Wolverine a pretty good fight for a few pages. I will say I did enjoy it. The Iron Monk, you see, cannot be defeated by any mortal weapon nor any mortal hand. In the end, Wolverine ends up using the Honor Sword bestowed to him by the Silver Samurai. The Honor Sword was forged out of a meteorite by a demon and seems to do the trick, causing the Iron Monk to be reduced to a wisp of pink smoke and a robe.
Number 5. Doctor Strange. Now, I know what you're thinking, and no, I'm not talking about Stephen Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme and Master of the Mystic Arts. I'm talking about Carlos Strange, who made his first and last appearance all the way back in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 41. Carlos Strange was just your typical mad scientist, creating and concocting all manners of weaponry in his mountain hideout when a lightning bolt struck him, increasing the electrical energy inside his brain, making him smarter and even madder than before. 6 months after the whole lightning incident, Strange built an ultra-frequency transmitter from radio and television parts, and used it to take mental control of Iron Man, forcing him to free him from his prison so he can enact his plan to take over the world and just give it to his daughter. Threatening to destroy the entire planet in 24 hours unless every nation surrenders to him, he launched a powerful bomb into the atmosphere to demonstrate just how serious he was. Iron Man quickly found his way to Strange's new hideout in the Atlantic and destroyed his main power source, effectively ruining his plan. With no other option, Strange withdrew and escaped custody, and we're honestly not too sure what he's cooking up now. Check out his story for yourself and let me know what you think of his character in the comments below. Number 4, the Chessman. Like so many criminal masterminds out there, Obadiah Stane was a bit too obsessed with the whole chess as a metaphor for controlling lives thing. So much so that he hired assassins who literally dressed themselves as chess pieces, you know, like pawns, bishops, knights, and rooks, with him acting as their king. The knight got a flying robot horse, the rook used a castle full of death traps, and the bishop, well, now that I think about it, he didn't do a whole lot. He was really only able to manipulate his opponent's actions. One by one, the chessmen went up against Iron Man, with none of them actually succeeding in taking him down. However, that didn't seem to be Stane's plan. The string of encounters and events actually led to Tony's addiction to alcohol to worsen, and this allowed him to buy Stark Industries and push Tony out of the Iron Man mantle for a while. Tony eventually got his act together and went up against the chess-themed team once more and emerged victorious, with Stane taking his own life with a repulsor blast. Check out these villainous pawns for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1982's Iron Man number 163. Number 3, Mr. Doll. Now I know what you're thinking, and no, his first name wasn't Ken, that would just be way too good of a joke. Nathan Dawley was a pretty average dealer in curios and art objects until he came across an extraordinary doll during his time in Africa. He discovered that he could reshape this doll to resemble whomever he wanted, and that he could cause that person to feel immense pain by manipulating the doll's features. He decided the best way to use his new voodoo doll was to coerce rich business people into legally signing over control of their business to him, which worked pretty great for him until he decided to go after Tony Stark. Tony found it tough to fight against this villain because initially he was unable to withstand the pain caused by the doll. So in true Tony Stark fashion, he built a suit just for the occasion. Now able to withstand the power, Tony used a force beam to change the doll's likeness into that of Mr. Doll's, and the immense pain this caused Mr. Doll caused him to pass out, allowing for his capture and arrest. Fast forward a bit and we see Mr. Doll once again, however this time his consciousness is trapped and split between two mannequins, Jake and William, aka the Brothers Grimm. This didn't last for too long though, because he was eventually beaten by Spider-Woman and his consciousness dispersed for good. Take a look at the voodoo doll wielding Mr. Doll for yourself in his first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 48. Number 2, the Unicorn. Milos Masaryk was a Soviet intelligence agent assigned to security detail at the laboratory of an inventor who was developing advanced weaponry. One of the inventor's projects was a helmet that could discharge destructive energy blasts from something called the Power Horn, and Milos came into possession of this helmet after his inventor hightailed it to the US, thus starting his mission as the Unicorn of avenging the disgrace caused by the inventor's defection. His first encounter with Iron Man really isn't much to write home about since Tony let the villain walk away scot-free. However, several months later, after a not so healthy dose of brainwashing and augmentation, Milos returned to the US with the goal of doing whatever it takes to reverse an unfortunate side effect of his treatment. However, Iron Man was able to thwart his plans once again. The Unicorn teamed up with the Red Ghost, the Mandarin, and even Titanium Man, all of them promising to find a cure for him if he defeated Iron Man. However, obviously none of them were actually going to follow through with that. Flash forward a bit and we see the Unicorn once again make his way to the US to bring down Stark Tower alongside Spymaster and some other baddies. This was a bit of a weird time for Iron Man and the Unicorn because near the end of this arc, the two actually ended up teaming up to take down Captain Atlas. However, after they were done, they went back to being not so friendly with each other. Take a look at this magically named villain for yourself, starting with their first appearance all the way back in 1964's Tales of Suspense number 56. Number 1, the Blood Brothers. Like so many great Marvel heroes before him, there was a brief time when Iron Man was flying around having cosmic adventures with space aliens. When Thanos first appeared in the Iron Man comics, we were introduced to some of his henchmen as well, two of them being the Blood Brothers, Guri and Rahas Blood. The alien siblings acted as Thanos' guardians of his Earth base, however, they were easily defeated by the Thing and Iron Man, and this just disgusted Thanos to the core, so he sent them away for a while to an unknown location. Years later, they made it back to Earth to try and get revenge on Iron Man, but they were defeated once again and ended up locked in Rikers Island. Fast forward a little bit and we see Rahas die and Guri go on solo, eventually becoming a part of the Hood's criminal army. Guri later had his cosmic potential unleashed, and this gave him a crazy power-up, and he became one of the Slaughter Lords under the name Brother Blood. Now it's not really said when, but at some point Rahas came back to life and the Blood Brothers reunited once again and joined a new incarnation of the Lethal Legion as a part of a contest that was assembled by the Grand Master. All of these fights around the world were thwarted by the Avengers though, including the Blood Brothers fight in Rome, and the Lethal Legion regrouped, escaped to nowhere, and decided to stay together as a team just to see what they could accomplish together. Check out this villainous brotherly bond for yourself, starting with 1973's Iron Man number 55, and try to name a better duo in the comments. Oh wait.
Number 10. Father. Father was the only name we had for one of the scientists behind the mad science secret robotics project known as Project Descendant. Father, Mother, and Brother were the code names for the scientists behind the project, which ended up creating a race of synthetic beings deemed as hybrid. Due to the three team leaders bickering, the beings they created ended up being released out into the world. Later, the Father would attempt to lure the descendants of these beings back, and would also go on to work on expanding the Deathlock project, aiming ambitiously to connect all the Deathlock versions of superhumans, joining them together to build a better world. It was during this time that he crossed paths with the very secretive X-Force, which at the time was led by Wolverine, who had refused Cyclops' orders to disband the team, keeping it going in secret. Number 9. Brothers of the New World. Wolverine ended up fighting and taking out pretty much all of this group because they kidnapped and killed his friend Lucy, who tried to escape them. They were a cult whose leader, Cry, kept a harem of women at their base. Wolverine set about attacking the cult and killing all of its members right around the time one of the women attempted to escape, who was actually a government agent who had been investigating the cult before being taken herself and added to their numbers of imprisoned women. This group of villains made an appearance during the first story arc of the 2003 Wolverine series entitled Brotherhood. Oh, also they were in part created by Greg Rucka, fun fact. Number 8. LCD. LCD is one of Donald Pierce's creations. She is an android who resembles a little girl and was created to kill Wolverine by self-detonating. However, she did not herself want to die, as she also was a smart android who ended up valuing her life. In the end, she reprogrammed the android doppelganger of Wolverine known as Albert, built to lure the real Wolverine into her trap, and instead would become Wolverine's ally. Number 7. Lazeer. Lazeer, or Azrael as he is also known, claims to be another form of death, one that we've seen Wolverine face before, and although we don't always see it, Lazeer is an angel of death that Wolverine in theory is forced to face every time he has a near-death experience. Lazeer battles for Logan's life, but Wolverine manages to fight him back each time, prevailing and ensuring his life belongs to him only. However, should Wolverine fail to defeat Azrael, the being would then claim his life and he would die. Apparently. Number 6. Tiger Shark. One of the first time these two ever crossed paths, it was one of the most random fights in comics. Wolverine and Tiger Shark originally started fighting because La Bandera, a mutant with emotion, manipulation, and energy manipulation abilities, who mainly uses her powers to make people feel more patriotic and empathic, was fighting Tiger Shark. Wolverine stumbled upon their fight and felt attracted to La Bandera and compelled to help her, mainly due to her mutant ability, obviously. Together the two made quick work of Tiger Shark, and then ran away together, because that's how that goes.
Number 5. Plant Man. Samuel Smithers was obsessed with plants and even studied them throughout his jobs. He wanted to invent a device that allowed communication between plants and humans. He had been working on this ray gun that he thought could actually make it work and create this open line of communication. It was only when it was hit by lightning when it actually got the ability to control plants. You know, he had superhuman strength and he has the ability to communicate and control plants. After he placed Captain America in a coma with his invention Pretty Poison, he got the attention of Spider-Man, who teamed up with the Falcon to take down Plant Man and get the cure for Captain America. Number 4. Grizzly. Maxwell Markham, aka Grizzly, is quite the strange supervillain. Basically, he looks like an actual grizzly bear in this mechanical suit. His story is that he used to be a wrestler until J. Jonah Jameson ruined his career with one article, which was the reason why he lost his license to be a pro wrestler. He wanted revenge on the man who ruined his career and later attacked the Daily Bugle. Spider-Man showed up and was able to take down Grizzly and sent him straight to prison. Grizzly had super strength, durability, and super sharp claws. Number 3. Kangaroo. Before Frank Oliver became the Kangaroo, he was just some guy who loved studying kangaroo back at his home of Australia. He used to be a boxer, but he got kicked out for how he fought and really hurt one of his other opponents. When he made his way over to America, he got quite into trouble and even caught the eye of Spider-Man, since Kangaroo had stolen an armored truck. but Spider-Man was able to apprehend him. Kangaroo later got surgery by Dr. Jonas Harrow, and this is what gave him his powers where he can actually leap like a kangaroo, but a lot higher and much further. Apparently, even before his surgery, he did have kind of some abilities where he could leap more so than the average human, but not to the extent of what the surgery gave him. Number 2, Big Wheel. Jackson Wheel, aka Big Wheel, got the Tinkerer to make him this big armored wheel that would, lead him to become the Big Wheel. This all started because Rocket Racer, someone he hired to find any dirt on himself, wanted more money for something extremely bad that he found on Wheel, something that would ruin his entire job in life. He found out about the Tinkerer from Rocket Racer, which led him to the creation of the armored wheel. He attacked Rocket Racer during a fight with Spider-Man. He almost killed Rocket Racer, but Spider-Man saved him, and then Big Wheel lost control, went into the river, and was later arrested and sent to prison. But don't worry, he was back to a life of crime shortly after that. They always do. Number 1, The Wall. Yes, there was a supervillain named The Wall that has gone up against Spider-Man in the past. And a little fun story, I remember hearing about this villain a few years ago from my friend who was going back and he was reading all of the original Amazing Spider-Man issues. I remember he sent me a picture while he was reading it, and I literally could not stop laughing because his slogan was, "This is one wall you will never crawl." I mean, it's weird, but at the same time, it's kind of amazing. Like, he's definitely one of the most weird and just strange supervillains that Spider-Man has ever gone up against. Okay, so a little backstory. Joshua Waldemeier, wow, had the job of laying bricks down, and one day, an explosion happened and hit a brick wall that had just been built, sending it crashing down and burying him under all these bricks. But didn't kill him. And actually, the bricks merged with his body, which turned him into the wall. Since he was an actual wall, Spider-Man had a hard time affecting him with any and all physical attacks. Spider-Man's web attacks didn't even work on him. But they later found themselves sitting on a bench and just working things out like two grown adults. A grown man spider and a grown man wall.
Number 10, Apocalypse. While you likely know Apocalypse, who has been in many mutant-themed comics as well as animated series and even an X-Men film, you might not recall the time that Thor and Apocalypse faced one another. That's right, these two have beef, and it actually goes way back. We learned about their first fight in a flashback in Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers issue number 6. Here we learn that the two came to blows more than 1,000 years in the past, after Apocalypse had learned that Thor would be the one to stop him in the future. Apocalypse tracks down a younger Thor, who is not yet worthy of Mjolnir, and instead wields his axe known as Jarnbjorn. Unsurprisingly, during this first fight, Thor would be defeated by Apocalypse and was forced to retreat. But this would not be the end of their feud for the two enemies, and they would of course come to blows again later on in their lives, as was predicted. Number 9, Mangog. Mangog is a villain who embodies and carries within itself the rage of their entire race, which was destroyed by Odin. We don't really know why Odin and Asgard decided to eliminate this race of beings, but they did. And so Mangog came to existence as the physical manifestation of that race's hatred towards all things Asgardian. This hate obviously extended to Thor. This has prompted the two to clash over the years. Oftentimes Mangog is too strong to be defeated in battle, however the being feeds off of psychic energies, and if one can cut it off from its source of hatred, which fuels Mangog, it could easily be defeated. Number 8, Gladiator. Gladiator always tends to show up to fight Thor in the most random stories. One such story even sees him taking on the all-new Thor, Jane Foster's Thor, when the Shi'ar gods decide they would like to prove their worth by defeating her in the Challenge of the Gods. In order to get her to compete, they decide to send the Imperial Guard, Gladiator included, to kidnap her. The Imperial Guard fought against the Asgardians but were defeated. In the end, Gladiator did decide to team up with Thor to take down the Shi'ar gods, who kinda were taking out their wrath on the Shi'ar people. This led to Quentin Quire becoming the new god of Shi'ar, which is, pretty random. Random stories like this where Gladiator would be pulled into strange conflicts with Thor, Jane Foster, or Thor Odinson appear to be a recurring thing in the comics. Number 7, Tomorrow Man. Speaking of weird storylines involving conflict between Gladiator and Thor, Archer Zarko was also involved in one such similar conflict. Zarko is known as the Tomorrow Man, an evil scientist from the future who first came into conflict with Thor when he traveled to the past in order to more easily acquire a nuclear bomb. bomb. This prompted Thor himself to time travel in order to pursue Tomorrow Man. Later on, Zarko would also recruit Gladiator from an alternate future to fight and defeat Thor, speaking of that feud that those two had previously. Number 6. Ragnarok. For those who cannot see the sometimes dramatic similarities between the superhero genre and soap operas, by the way, this is one of them. Ragnarok is Thor's evil clone. He was created using a strand of Thor's hair that Iron Man had found. Or so Tony claims. I definitely think he was pulling out strands of Thor's hair while he slept, or just pulled some out of his hairbrush super sneakily. But no, the story is he just found a hair of Thor's and decided to keep it, just in case. In case of what, Tony? In case of what? This of course later led to the creation of Ragnarok and the use of him during the events of the First Civil War, when Thor would not join with Iron Man and Stark decided to use this one hair he happened to be saving to create a clone of Thor to basically rally and inspire the troops. Ragnarok would appear to perish at the hands of Hercules, but would later return once more and even join Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers during the events of Dark Reign. Number 5. Empath. Manuel de la Rocha made his first appearance in the original New Mutant series, where he was part of Emma Frost's team known as the Hellions. He's recently reappeared in the newest Hellion series from 2020 and proves just how powerful, but also how sadistic he can be. Empath's power is, you guessed it, empathy, and he can use this power to not only sense others' emotions, but also to control them, in effect manipulating others into doing whatever he wishes them to do. His influence can be subtle, such that someone might not even realize they're being manipulated by him, or it can be more forceful, turning his victims into complete husks of their former selves and bending them fully to his will. Number 4. Vulcan. Vulcan is one of the most powerful mutants around, being an Omega-level mutant, skilled in energy manipulation and absorption. Yet he is somehow the lesser known of all the Summers, despite his insane power levels. He has also demonstrated the ability to absorb his opponent's powers as well, and use them for himself on the rare occasion. Vulcan is the youngest Summers brother, also known as Gabe Summers, and we only learned of his existence in 2006 when he first appeared in the comic X-Men Deadly Genesis issue number 1, and yet he is considered the most powerful of these three. Number 3. Orphan Maker and Nanny. Orphan Maker still remains a relatively mysterious character, though is also one who still proves to be a force to be reckoned with in combat. Orphan Maker is also known as Peter and was part of a plot of Mr. Sinister's originally. However, when Mr. Sinister decided that Peter could not be controlled, he decided to eliminate him. Nanny, an insane cyborg, however, saved him, believing it was her responsibility to look after orphan mutant children and protect them. Although I will say she's got a weird way of going about it. While insane, Nanny was also once a scientist and remains quite intelligent. She actually outfitted Orphan Maker with weapons and a powerful suit to help her in her task. While it's still unclear as to what Orphan Maker's true mutant powers are, and while he seems to still have the mind of a child, probably due to Nanny's manipulation, his suit and weapons make him a formidable foe in combat, and he often uses pixie dust in battle to help Nanny influence and control the minds of their opponents, as she herself is a telepath, but a weak one, so she needs a little bit of help. Needs a little bit of pixie dust. Even during a fight with Cyclops, Scott's optic blasts were unable to harm Orphan Maker while he was in his armor, with Scott's blast simply reflecting off the armor, causing more harm than help, really. Number 2. Trinary. Considering the modern age we live in, Trinary is a pretty powerful mutant. Her abilities allow her to control all tech that is within her line of sight. She has used these powers to move massive sums of money digitally and to manipulate and control Sentinel tech. Currently on Krakoa, Trinary is one of the few technopathic mutants trusted with the important project known as Sleeping Giant, wherein mutants monitor for upcoming advancement in Sentinel technology, such as Nimrods or the creation of a mother mold, so that they can ideally put a stop to its development. Project Sleeping Giant were instrumental in helping the X-Men to destroy a mother mold that Orchis was creating before it went online. Number 1. Bailey Hoskins. Now you might think I'm joking here if you happen to know the obscure Bailey Hoskins, but I'm really not. Bailey appeared in his own miniseries titled X-Men, Worst X-Man Ever. He was known for being the worst X-Man ever because his ability only allowed him to do one thing: explode. But he didn't have any regeneration powers, so he basically was a mutant who could never use his powers, otherwise he'd kill himself. It's kind of a one-hit wonder. So how is that powerful? Well, it's also implied in the series that when he does choose to sacrifice himself and blow up the villain of the story, that he makes it possible for Earth 616 to come into existence. So without him, we wouldn't have the main Marvel continuity that we know and love today, potentially. If saving the entire continuity from becoming a dystopian future isn't powerful, then I don't know what is.
Number 10. Death Urge. Similar to how the DC Universe has the Black Flash acting as messenger of death, Marvel decided to dip their toes into that realm as well, and out came Death Urge, a wraith-like superhuman entity with the ability to fly at some ridiculous speeds, turn intangible, and of course, pull various weapons like spears and swords out of their body. When these weapons strike Death Urge's targets, they immediately die with a blackness spreading from the spot where the weapon struck and passed through the target's body. If the weapon happens to pass through someone other than Death Urge's target, that person only feels a numbing coldness but will not actually blacken or die. Death Urge's only targets are apparently only those who have craved death and oblivion to some degree, so I guess I better be on the lookout. Not a whole lot is known about Death Urge besides the fact that he once served Oblivion and had a very close relationship with Craig Hollis. In Hollis' earlier life, Death Urge acted as both a guardian angel and a bad influence for him, goading him into dangerous situations in an attempt to awaken him to his own immortality. However, this relationship was damaged beyond repair when Hollis' girlfriend killed herself and Death Urge arrived to collect her soul, with Hollis believing that Death Urge had goaded Terry to commit suicide and from then on viewed him as a tormentor. He has been seen up against not only the Avengers but the Fantastic Four as well, and each time he has caused some serious trouble, so it's kinda weird that he hasn't had too many appearances.
Number 9. Mole Man. Mole Man originally appeared in Fantastic Four issue number 1, but has become a villain to not just the FF over time, but the Avengers as well. In fact, despite not being one of the strongest villains around, the Avengers even at one point had to team up with the FF to defeat Mole Man, who had kidnapped Sue Storm. Mole Man became a villain because he felt that society had rejected him. He aimed to take revenge on the world for this. Mole Man has taken on more than one Avengers team as well, even having beef with not officially sanctioned West Coast Avengers, believing the team had attacked his home of Subterranea located beneath Monster Island. He is also tangled with Tony Stark's Mighty Avengers as well.
Number 8. Star Stalker. Varanus aka Star Stalker is a dragon-like alien monster from the planet Vormir. By wrapping himself in a cocoon, he was able to transform himself into a larger, more powerful form, known as his ionic combustion form. In this form, Varanus was able to absorb the ions of anything around him, allowing him to drain the energy of enemies such as Thor, or even shorting out Iron Man's armor. But that's not all, because he frequently used this power to gorge himself on entire planets, destroying them in the process. After attacking and defeating Krull, this monster caught the attention of the Avengers, and although he was able to hide from them for a short period of time, Mantis was eventually able to find him and the fight ensued. Starstalker was able to dispatch the Avengers pretty easily by taunting them with stories of his origins while refusing to reveal his weakness, before spinning himself into another ionic cocoon to boost his power to destroy the Earth. Eventually, Mantis was able to figure out that his weakness was solar energy, and her and Vision used this weakness to just turn him into stone.
Number 7. Red Ghost. The Red Ghost is also a Fantastic Four villain as well. He is a Russian communist who is known for his mad science. He studied and sought to recreate the mutating effects of the cosmic rays, which were responsible for giving the Fantastic Four their powers. As such, Ivan Krakoan built a ceramic ship and went up into space with a team of apes. He and his apes gained powers. Ivan himself gained the ability to appear intangible, hence his name as the Red Ghost. Because, you know, he's a communist and he can be see-through. And he also became the leader of the Super Apes, because they also got powers. Later on, he would team up with Mole Man and ended up fighting the Avengers while they attempted to rescue their kidnapped teammate Giant Man from Mole Man's clutches. He was also thwarted by the Avengers later on when he attempted to rob a bank randomly with his team of Super Apes.
Number 6. Cyclop. No, not Cyclops, Cyclop. Also known as One Eye for, well, obvious reasons, Cyclop was a member of an ancient insect alien race that worshipped the Dark Gods, and because of this, Cyclop was eventually chosen by the Dark Gods to find a power source for them in exchange for his race getting to conquer Earth. He was quickly able to capture the Hulk, however the other members of the Avengers were able to defeat him relatively easily, and this resulted in Cyclop losing the Hulk. Deemed as incompetent, the Dark Gods abandoned him as their agent, and he was dumped into the microverse by them, with no way to return to his original size or home world. Still wanting to impress the Dark Gods in any possible way, he devised and executed a plan that turned him into the god of the microverse. He was confronted by the Hulk and Jarella, but managed to hypnotize and enslave the Hulk. However, that didn't last for too long, so out of desperation, Cyclops just accidentally annihilated himself with one of his devices. Poor little evil guy. Number 5. Miss America. Raised in a dimension outside of time and space known as the Utopian Parallel, America Chavez is one of Marvel's newer teen heroes, and she is a powerhouse to say the least. She's been a member of multiple super teams, including the Young Avengers, A-Force, the West Coast Avengers, and the Ultimates, and belongs to the younger generation of heroes who will potentially be the stars of Marvel stories in the future. Chavez gained her powers as a young girl from a magical entity that resided where she lived, and these powers are superhuman strength and speed, star portal creation which allows her to travel the multiverse, and of course, force, hypercosmic awareness, alongside a number of other powers and abilities. When her dimension was threatened by black holes, her mothers sacrificed themselves to save it, and Chavez ran away from home to travel across dimensions. This began her journey both literally and emotionally from girl to superhero. Since her introduction, America has taken part in many huge plot points, one of the biggest being her role in Civil War II. Now, I won't spoil too much of it for you because it absolutely deserves a read, but let's just say she was smart enough to outsmart Captain Marvel and Spectrum. Appearing for the first time in 2011's Avengers #1, why not check her out for yourself? Number 4. Captain Universe. Tamara DeVoe, aka Captain Universe, was once a woman who suffered from some pretty bad amnesia after a car crash. Although that's not the greatest outcome, she was also imbued with the power of the Enigma Force in the aftermath, so I guess that's somewhat of a bright side. Now, what's the Enigma Force? Well, it is a mystical energy that passes through the microverse in order to protect and preserve the microverse. The wielders of this force are imbued with the Unipower, a facet of the Enigma Force that gives the wielder some pretty sweet powers. In Tamara's case, she was given the ability to manipulate matter and energy, and can also use Univision, which allows her to sense things on a subatomic level or at great distances, or she can use it to literally force someone to tell the truth. Her first mission with the Avengers was actually on Mars to stop the powerful beings Ex Nihilo, Abyss, and Aleph from terraforming the Earth in their image. When Tamara approached them, both Nihilo and Abyss recognized her as their literal goddess and the physical manifestation of the universe itself, so they immediately submitted and just agreed to her terms. However, Aleph did not and just straight up attacked her. Captain Universe easily burned the robot to ashes with a single touch, and the Avengers returned to Earth after a very easy job well done. That wasn't her only mission with the team though, but I will let you check that one out for yourself. Give her story a read starting with 2013's Avengers Volume 5, Number 1. Number 3. Ares. Inspired by a Greek god of the same name, Ares was initially introduced as an antagonist to Thor. However, in 2006, Ares became more of an anti-hero, which inevitably led to him joining forces with the Avengers. Thanks to his Olympian physiology, Ares possesses superhuman strength, speed, stamina, durability, and agility, and is a true immortal, meaning that he can't die by any conventional means. Not only that, Ares has the ability to manipulate war, strife, combat, and all forms of conflict, including mental, physical, spiritual, and conceptual ones, regardless of the area and numbers involved, meaning he can control how they progress. Immediately following the superhero civil war over its legislation, Iron Man and Ms. Marvel traveled to Ares' construction site to recruit him for their new Avengers team. Agreeing that the heroes had ruined his civilian cover, Ares eventually agreed to join the team after Iron Man threatened to deport him to Olympus if he didn't register with the US government and promised a salary similar to that of his construction job. He played a pivotal role in Ultron's defeat and was also largely responsible for bringing down Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. That victory was sadly bittersweet though, because it led to his death as he was just straight up ripped completely in half. Don't worry though, like I said, he is a god, so he was resurrected not too long after. Check out his entire story for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in the Golden Age in 1942's Comedy Comics Number 10. Number 2. Gilgamesh. Often referred to as the Forgotten One, Gilgamesh's heroic exploits have become so legendary over the millennia that he's often referred to as heroes of myth like Hercules and of course Gilgamesh, which kind of explains his name and why he goes by Gilgamesh. He is one of, if not the strongest member of the hidden group of superpowered beings known as the Eternals, an ancient race of genetically altered humans created by the Celestials. Alongside his teammates, he helps shield humanity from the vicious deviants, though Gilgamesh seems to have a very soft spot for protecting the people of Earth. He joined the Avengers in a time where their membership was at an all-time low, and although his time with them was pretty short, he was an absolutely vital member of the team. While all Eternals were born with an inherent set of superhuman abilities including super strength, Gilgamesh's strength far exceeds that of any of his counterparts, making him one of the most physically powerful characters in all of Marvel, with strength comparable to that of Hercules, Thor, and any other godlike being. As a result of countless millennia of training, Gilgamesh is also an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combatant, which coupled with his imperviousness to damage makes him one of Marvel's most dangerous characters. As is the case with most Eternals, Gilgamesh can also emit deadly beams of light, heat, and physical force from his hands and eyes, and can manipulate matter to a limited degree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's Eternals, Number 13. Number 1. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, aka Blue Marvel, was known as a child prodigy from an early age and has PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. After serving his time in the Korean War, Adam joined and led a project attempting to harness antimatter by creating a negative reactor, but unfortunately there was an unexpected explosion and both he and his partner Connor Sims were exposed to the radiation. Now Sims wasn't too lucky and his whole body just disassembled, but Adam was able to become a stable antimatter reactor and develop some pretty sweet powers. As Blue Marvel, he possesses super strength that rivals both the the Hulk and Thor, can manipulate antimatter into energy blast, can fly, is pretty much invulnerable, and is also pretty much immortal, as he ages much slower than the normal human, making him a serious force to be reckoned with. As a part of the mighty Avengers, both the 1970s and the one led by Luke Cage, and the Ultimates, we have seen Blue Marvel go up against the likes of the Deathwalkers, King Hyperion, and one time he even flew straight through Shumagorath's head because why not, right? Not only that, he has been seen able to withstand the blast of a hydrogen bomb, and can even go toe-to-toe with Captain Marvel and come out relatively unscathed. So, yeah. He deserves the top spot today. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2009's Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, number 1. Number 10, the actor. Now, I've heard of method actors, but this definitely takes the meaning to a whole other level. An ace infiltrator whose real identity is unknown that worked for the Russians back when they were an evil empire. Like Spider-Man's nemesis the Chameleon, the actor can perfectly impersonate anyone, and he was quite successful at stealing state secrets until he ran up against Tony Stark. The actor traveled to the United States and disguised as Stark easily entered Stark Industries, where he succeeded in not only obtaining some important blueprints, but also discovered that Tony Stark himself was Iron Man. The actor left feeling satisfied with his work and left cleanup duty to his agents. However, Tony was able to overcome them very easily and ended up traveling to the USSR to pose as the actor to foil their evil plans. And talk about a role reversal, am I right? When the real actor returned to his employer, the Red Barbarian, he was shot right as he came because he was deemed a traitor. This didn't actually kill him though, because he later resurfaced to work for the Red Barbarian to once again take down Tony Stark. Why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 42. Number 9, the Melter. Bruno Horgan was once an American industrialist specializing in weapons for the US military until a government inspection revealed he was using shoddy materials, and you can probably guess why that's not really good. Tony Stark scooped up his defense contracts because, you know, his weapons actually worked, and a bankrupt Horgan decided the only rational thing to do was to blame Tony for sabotaging his work and ruining his life. Luckily for him, and unlucky for literally everyone else, he found himself among his ruined company's assets a weapon prototype that generated a beam capable of melting iron on contact, and this began his evil reign as the Melter. Tony was able to defeat this villain pretty easily. However, he was still deemed enough of a threat to create a new suit made out of aluminum, and good thing he did, because in his second encounter with the Melter, that completely saved him. Skip ahead a little bit and we see the Melter return with a new version of his melting ray and team up with Whiplash and the Blizzard to take down Tony Stark under the orders of Justin Hammer. Tony was able to overcome all three of the villains alongside Cable, and Horgan was sent to Rikers Island, where he met a nuclear physicist that helped him further augment his equipment so that it would work against Iron Man's aluminum armor. Fast forward just a little bit more and we see the Melter reach the end of his journey at the hands of Scourge, who was posing as his assistant. Take a look at this character story for yourself, starting with 1963's Tales of Suspense number 47. Number 8, Gargantus. Before Iron Man found his groove fighting industrial spies and the occasional world conqueror, he was stuck duking it out with alien robots like Gargantus. Created by an unknown and unnamed alien race that had been scouting the Earth for the past 80,000 years, Gargantus was built in the image of a Neanderthal because that was the only species that the aliens had encountered. It first arrived in the town of Granville and used its hypnotizing eyes to conquer the townspeople, but the aliens' plans were quickly foiled by Iron Man, who was alerted by the invasion because one of the young women trapped by Gargantus didn't show up for their date, and nobody stands up Tony Stark, so he knew something was up. After a little back and forth with the robot, Tony figured out that Gargantus was actually a robot and decided to surround it with powerful magnets that tore it apart completely because, you know, magnets. After the aliens realized that maybe the Earth's defenses are too good, they decide to fly away, and we don't hear about them again until 1999's Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty Volume 1 number 5. Fun fact, Gargantus is technically the first villain Iron Man ever faced, so why not check it out in its first appearance all the way back in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 40, and let me know what you think of this caveman robot in the comments below. Number 7, Termite. I'm sure we all know the classic way that most people gain their powers in comics. You know, an accident happens and instead of dying, they gain abilities. Pretty standard, right? Well, I think Marvel was a little bit tired of that because Neil Donaldson was just born with his ability to disintegrate whatever he touches. After discovering his powers, he was hired by Obadiah Stane to eliminate the competition. However, James Rhodes, the acting Iron Man at the time, quickly got word of this and set out to take the Termite down. During his third fight with the villain, the first two ending with the Termite escaping, Rhodes was seemingly evenly matched with him until Tony Stark showed up with the mutant power neutralizer and shot the Termite with it, removing his powers completely, allowing him to be arrested and taken to jail. Word of this got back to Stane and he hired the Enforcer to take him out. However, the Enforcer was taken out first by the Scourge of the Underworld, so basically the Termite was saved completely by accident. The Termite was later seen sulking in jail, and that's really the last we've seen of him. Check out this villain for yourself in his first appearance all the way back in 1984's Iron Man number 189. Number 6, Vibro. Alton Vibro was your average seismologist until he fell into the San Andreas Fault while testing an experimental machine, and of course he ends up with super vibrating powers because this is the Marvel Universe, and like I said a little bit ago, if you have an accident in the Marvel Universe, then you're probably going to end up with some sick powers. These powers allowed Alton to generate high-level seismic vibrations and fire them from his hands, causing shockwaves, opening chasms, and generating earthquakes. Thinking his employer Frankenfortney was to blame for his accident, he sought revenge on him and thus began his villain career as Vibro. After 2 battles with James Rhodes, the acting Iron Man at the time, Vibro was eventually taken down with the help of Tony Stark in the Mark I Iron Man armor. Vibro hasn't only been a problem for Iron Man though, and he has also gone up against the Falcon, Nomad, S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers West Coast, and even Wolverine. We later see him team up with the Mandarin alongside a bunch of other Avengers to once again try and take down the Armored Avenger. Making his first appearance all the way back in 1984's Iron Man number 186, why not give this villain story a read for yourself?
Number 5. Citadel. Despite the fact that Wolverine did later try to help Citadel and likely never truly saw him as an enemy, Citadel resented both Wolverine and Alpha Flight after they stopped him from achieving his goal. Citadel was one of the antagonists in issue 5 of Wolverine First Class, where Citadel was also known then as Weapon Y. Wolverine suspected he was also made by the same people who had put adamantium inside of him, as Citadel had adamantium skin, or an adamantium exoskeleton externally instead of internally. Citadel was a soldier who was injured in action and ended up being experimented on instead of being properly treated. He wanted the government to be held accountable and was holding government officials hostage in Quebec, Canada. Wolverine's mission was to deal with the situation, extract the superhuman threat, and secure the hostages. He didn't know that Citadel himself was also a potential victim until it was too late, and the government stepped in to cart Citadel off without Wolverine being able to do or say much about it. Number 4. Abdul Al-Hazarad. Fun fact, did you know that Abdul Al-Hazarad in H.P. Lovecraft lore is the character credited with the creation of the Necronomicon? Yeah, he is, and as such, he is also acknowledged as being its creator in the Marvel Universe as well. He and Wolverine came to blows in Madripoor when Abdul was trying to take over Tiger's crime syndicate. Abdul attempted to attack Wolverine with a demon, but in the end, Wolverine survived, and Abdul ended up trapped in the same demonic realm his demon pals had come from. Sucks to suck, I guess. Number 3. Damage. For those who are unfamiliar with Damage, he's basically Marvel's version of the Terminator. There's a lot of parallels there anyways. He was originally the human Jamie Ortiz. The Kingpin turned him into a cybernetic being after Damage was brought to the brink of death by Punisher. Kingpin later gave Damage cosmetic surgery to make him look identical to the Punisher as well, and used him against Frank Castle, attempting to break Castle and ruin the Punisher's name by having Damage kill a bunch of innocent people. Wolverine and Damage both ripped one another apart in a fight, and when Punisher finally showed up, he finished Damage off by setting him on fire. Number 2. Geist. Nikolaus Geist was a mad scientist from Germany working on the side of the Axis during World War II. He was working to create a new type of super soldier for Germany, similar to the United States super soldier Captain America, aka Steve Rogers. Roughhouse was his main test subject, and in the end, Wolverine was the one to free Roughhouse and put a stop to Geist. Geist was also a cyborg, but Wolverine cut off his metal shell in an attempt to kill him. It was later revealed that while he was suspected dead and was incapacitated after this fight, he did however manage to survive. However, soon after, another mutant, Magneto, did kill him, so he dead. Number 1. Roughhouse. Going back again to the days of battle in Madripoor for who would get to be the king or queen of crime, and in effect rule Madripoor, Wolverine found himself allied with Yasan Hoan, aka Tiger. It was also during this time that he first fought with Roughhouse, who made his first appearance in issue 4 of Wolverine's series from 1988. Roughhouse was allied with General Koi, and got his superpowers from either his relation to the mythical race of Asgardians, or from being a mutant, or maybe a bit of both. It's a little foggy. Though they are enemies and remained enemies thereafter, Wolverine did still save Roughhouse from Geist, because experimenting on people in Logan's book is just plain wrong. And I think in everyone's book, let's not experiment on people. Can we all agree on that?
Number 10. Mindworm. Mindworm, aka William Turner, but not the William Turner from Pirates of the Caribbean, is very powerful with his mind, allowing himself to read people's thoughts, drain people's energy, and create illusions. Mindworm has a very large head and brain that he was born with, At one time, he was neighbors to Flash Thompson and Peter Parker when he moved in with Flash. Since Vineworm was always feeding off people's minds, it was no surprise that he was trying to feed off of Peter's mind as well. But since Peter's so smart, he could fight off Mindworm's attack to his mind. This upset Mindworm, and he later fought Peter, but of course he was unsuccessful and lost. Mindworm used this as an opportunity to figure out why he was even doing this, and after taking a hard look at himself and realizing that his anger was coming from what happened to his parents, he makes peace with Peter, and he even uses his slogan, "With great power comes great responsibility." Unfortunately, Mindworm's story doesn't end great, since criminals manipulate him back to a life of crime, and he went back to prison, and afterwards he was killed by a group of people on the street. It's pretty depressing. Number 9, the Spot. So before he became the Spot, he was known as a guy named Jonathan, a scientist who was working for none other than Kingpin. Yes, so you know he has to be pretty evil working for a guy like Kingpin. Anyways, Kingpin wanted Jonathan to figure out a way to replicate Cloak's powers. Not such an easy task, as Jonathan would soon find out. Instead, he opened up a portal that sent him into a spotted dimension. I wonder if that's where he got his name from. When he was inside that dimension, his skin changed to where he had black spots all over bleached white skin. These spots were all around his entire body and would allow him to teleport anything that he touches. He hated Spider-Man so much that he even formed a group with some of the people that will show up later on this list. Spoiler alert, one of them may be Grizzly or maybe Kangaroo. Maybe, but you'll have to keep watching to find out if that's true. But they were part of the Spider-Man Revenge Squad. Of course, it didn't really work out for him. Number 8, the Living Brain. So the Living Brain was created by the character Dr. Petty, and is basically an artificial intelligence robot machine. There was nothing that the Living Brain couldn't solve. So when it was brought to a high school, it gave 2 people a pretty good idea of what they could do with this crazy robot. They had the idea to steal it and use it for whatever they would go out and gamble. They attempted to steal it, but Dr. Petty didn't want to lose his creation and fought them off, and caused one of them to hit the Living Brain, damaging it and causing it to lose control of itself. It then turned on everyone and was on a mission to destroy, but luckily Spider-Man defeated it and saved the day. The Living Brain has appeared several times after this by, people either trying to use it to take down bullies or try to rob banks. The Living Brain was even part of the Sinister Six at one point. Number 7, Swarm. This is definitely a weird one. So are a lot of these ones on this list. So the Swarm was a Nazi scientist who survived World War II and was really into bees and poisons. He really wanted to try to make the bees he was finding very villainous and use them to his advantage. He discovered a beehive, and since he was trying to make them change their behavior, he was successful at doing that. But that is what ended up getting him killed by the bees and allowed the bees to use his consciousness and what was left of his body to become the Swarm. He has the abilities to fly and even turn as big or as small as he likes. He can also manipulate himself into different shapes. This makes it very hard for Spider-Man to fight him, since really he's just a swarm of bees. He also could control not only bees, but any type of insect. Number 6, Leapfrog. So Leapfrog, aka Vincent Patillo, loved to invent an assortment of just random items. He always wanted more though after every invention, and he was never really satisfied. That is, until he developed this invention so that he would be able to leap several stories in the air. He used this invention and created a suit to become the Leapfrog. This is how he began to get into the criminal world, but he didn't have the greatest success there, and there's not a lot about him.
Number 5, Bloodscream. Bloodscream would end up partnering with Wolverine's other lesser-known nemesis that we talked about on the part 1 of this list, Roughhouse. While many associate these two as being partners in crime, this isn't the only Wolverine villain that Bloodscream has teamed up with in the past. He has also teamed up with Albert and LCD as well, and in the Old Man Logan universe partnered up with both Kraven and Roughhouse in an attempt to help Kraven capture Old Man Logan. Number 4, Nuke. Many people forget about Nuke, but he is a lesser known villain in the comics who was actually created by Wolverine during his time as a Weapon X operative. He ended up securing Nuke when he was just a child for Project Homegrown. Weapon Plus, with Wolverine's help, would later drive him insane and turn him into a brainwashed cyborg to be used as a weapon. Even years later, these two still come to blows. During Death of Wolverine, Nuke would accept a contract to capture Wolverine and bring him into Viper alive. This would lead to an epic fight between the two, where Wolverine would only end up winning by smashing his own skull repeatedly into Nuke's until he was unable to fight back. Is this the most metal way that a fight has been won in comics? Let me know in the comments. Most metal fights, that's a list we need to do. Number 3. Romulus. Does everyone remember Romulus? One of the most weirdly epic and yet short-lived villains of almost all time in Wolverine's rogue history. He had this huge buildup, and we went on to find out that he was an ancient villain from prehistoric times, only to find out that this was all a lie and apparently a ruse to distract Wolverine. He was, however, the villain responsible for cutting Daken out of his dead mother, Itsu's womb, and for training him and turning him into a killing machine. He manipulated Daken from day one, helping to turn him against his father, and was the one responsible for helping him to bond the melted down Muramasa blade to Daken's claws. Or at least helped him get the idea. Because, you know, the Tinkerer obviously did that in actuality. I don't even know if Romulus knows how to melt metal. Probably. Number 2. Gorgon. If you don't know the Gorgon and this pretty awesome story featuring him, you should. During the third Wolverine series from 2003, Wolverine ends up getting entangled with the Gorgon when he is attempting to locate Ichiro, the missing son of one of his dead fiance's cousins, who has been kidnapped. I say one of his dead fiancés because I feel like Wolverine's got a few of those. Gorgon is a telepathic mutant who, as his name implies, can turn those who make direct eye contact with him into stone. Gorgon ends up capturing Wolverine and giving him over to the Hand, who brainwashed him and turned him into their own agent. However, Wolverine would later break free of their control and would even go on to kill Gorgon using his own claws to reflect Gorgon's deadly gaze back at him, transforming Gorgon into stone before shattering him. But don't worry, Gorgon would be resurrected later on and return. Gotta love those old mythology references. Comics taking old stories and making them new again, and also never letting people die. Number 1. Ogun. Ogun was once Wolverine's martial arts mentor and a powerful sorcerer and telepath, but later became Logan's enemy after being spurned by Wolverine, joining the Yakuza, and going on to kidnap, train, and brainwash Kitty Pryde during the Kitty Pryde and Wolverine story. Ogun even managed to turn Kitty Pryde against Logan, sending her to attack him when Wolverine had come to rescue her. Fortunately, Wolverine was able to break Ogun's control over Kitty. In the end, Kitty fought Ogun but was unable to defeat her former master. However, Wolverine was able to do so. After being beaten but spared by Wolverine, Ogun attacked Kitty once more and was killed by Wolverine as a result. Of course, this is comics, so this wouldn't be the last we'd see of Ogun by a long shot. Number 10. Prodigy. I feel like a lot of people maybe forgot about Prodigy, as he's been MIA for some time in the comics and was depowered during the events of M-Day. But with the magic of Krakoa and Dawn of X, he was able to return to us, being resurrected and also regaining his powers. 1. Prodigy happens to be a super genius, but this is also because he's a telepath with the ability to basically mimic anyone's skill set and share their knowledge while nearby. This has also been shown in the past to extend to fighting precognition, where he can basically use his abilities to read a person and predict their next move of attack in a battle, which is pretty sweet. He often also builds his own advanced tech, and even when depowered is known to possess a great level of intellect, making him a challenging adversary whether or not he has his mutant abilities. Even as a depowered mutant, you might not want to mess with him. Number 9. Lady Mastermind. Lady Mastermind, aka Regan Wingard, recently popped back up in the giant-sized Nightcrawler comics and was welcomed into the mutant nation of Krakoa. Some, however, may not know or appreciate her mutant history and background. Just who is Lady Mastermind? Well, she's the daughter of Jason Wingard, aka the original villain known as Mastermind. Her powers take after her father's, allowing her to create realistic illusions projected into her target's minds. While she also has an even lesser known suspected half-sister, Regan's powers are often depicted as being the more powerful between the two, with it even being said that her abilities are even more stronger than her father's. Additionally, she is also fairly skilled in hand-to-hand combat, a skill set her father actually very much lacked. He was hilarious in a fight. He's like a rag doll. Sorry Mastermind. Number 8. Gentle. Gentle is a mutant with the abilities of super strength. I know, very hilarious considering his name. He can grant himself immediate muscle mass that basically allows him to change size and increase his strength when needed. It is yet unknown just how strong Gentle can make himself, and he is also known for being someone who could potentially even take on the Hulk, although he is more of a pacifist, hence his name. Gentle's real name is Nesno Abidemi. I hope I'm saying that right. Nesno Abidemi. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. It's a hard one to say. He was raised in Wakanda, but always felt like an outsider because his father was Russian. When his mutant abilities surfaced, it was actually Aurora Monroe Storm, who was queen at the time in Wakanda, who encouraged him to be sent to the Xavier Institute so he could learn how to better control his powers. His vibranium tattoos are also meant to help him to control those powers. Also, vibranium tattoos are super cool, but I think they're also super painful to get, so maybe don't get them. You can't, because it's not a real substance, but still. Number 7. Egg. Fabio Medina might not seem like a powerful mutant based on his ability, but since his rise to the supremely important mutant group known as the Five on Krakoa, he can be considered one of the most important and powerful mutants around. When he combines his powers with that of the Five, he has control over life and death. Originally, the bouncy gold balls that he shot forth from his chest were believed to be nothing special, but it was later revealed that these balls were actually infertile eggs, which could be used in the process of resurrecting new mutants. Number 6. Tempest. Eva Bell is another member of the Five. She has actually appeared in less issues than Egg, if you can believe it, despite the fact that she has a pretty neat power set, and it's been neat since the beginning, which allows her to time travel. Tempest, as she used to be known, was able to control the passage of time in a specific pocket of space. She could also slow time in a current space that she also inhabited, either slowing time around her or creating time bubbles to manipulate time in that bubble, where she could speed it up or slow it down. The only challenge for her has been losing control of her powers, which can cause them to behave unpredictably. Still, controlling time is a pretty impressive and powerful ability to have. Number 5. Curse. Also known as Algum, Curse is one of the strongest dark elves around. He at one point allied himself with Malekith, and while he often lacks the direction, intelligence, and depth to really become a standout villain when it comes to his interactions with the Thunder God, he is still likely one of the more powerful of Thor's villains. Curse only served Malekith for a time, as well as he later found himself betrayed by Malekith, causing him to break ties with the other dark elf. The Beyonder also bolstered Curse's power levels, increasing them using his own cosmic energy, after sensing and being attracted to Curse's intense hatred for Thor. The Beyonder, of course, just gave him a power boost for funsies, cause, well, he's kind of chaotic like that. Number 4. Desak, the Destroyer of Gods. Desak was a villain who originally started out as a pretty kind-hearted and pious man. He became a villain after feeling that the sacrifice of his daughter to his gods had not really been justified. Losing his faith in the gods as his people were attacked, he decided to accept godlike powers that were offered to him, so he could avenge his and people's losses. Desak set out to kill the gods and was predicted to be the one who would also strike down the gods of Olympus in due time. As such, Thor set out to stop Desak before he could arrive, venturing out into space with Hercules and Beta Ray Bill. Number 3. The Enchanters 3. The Enchanters 3 were brothers who were also masterful sorcerers. They each were armed with their own living talisman, which amplifies their magical powers, and their names were Forsung, Brona, and Magner. Yep, they certainly sound like they could be Thor villains just based on those names. These brothers decided one day that they just wanted to conquer Asgard after running into the warriors and Thor's companions Balder and Sif. When Balder and Sif caught on, they rushed down to Earth to warn Thor of the Enchanters' plot. Thor teams up with his fellow Asgardians, including Odin, and manages to defeat the Enchanters, slaying one of them and trapping the other two in an alternate dimension. It's also later revealed that the brothers actually had a fourth sibling named Enrocked, and following this revelation, we also learned that his formerly trapped brothers are free and have also returned, prompting Thor to once again take on these magical foes. Although having a fourth brother kind of ruins the whole Enchanters 3 name, but I guess because one of them was dead it still works, because now there's still 3? Number 2. Bloodaxe the Executioner. Bloodaxe is a villain who basically gets all of her powers from a mystical Asgardian axe, which grants its user power but also corrupts them. It was once wielded by Scourge the Executioner, and as such is imbued with evil energy that also compels whoever wields it to kill, eventually driving them into an insane bloodlust. Bloodaxe wielded this power to kill low-level criminals indiscriminately, and as such attracted the attention of Thor. Oddly enough, while Jackie Lucas, Bloodaxe's civilian identity, first appeared in the late 80s in the Thor comics, she would not appear as Bloodaxe until more than 50 issues later. She also originally wore Scourge's armor during her first appearance as Bloodaxe, in addition to wielding the enchanted axe itself. Number 1. Quicksand. Quicksand was a pretty random villain who first appeared in Thor issue 392. She was originally a human who was transformed into a sand elemental creature due to a nuclear accident. So basically she's female Sandman. As As such, she holds a pretty big grudge against nuclear power, which seems to have been trendy to do in the 80s, as there was also a protest going on at the power plant she attacked at the time that she attacked it. This comic was likely reflecting the opinion of the times, as the Chernobyl disaster would have only happened a couple of years prior to this issue's release. It came out in 1988 and the disaster at Chernobyl happened in 1986. History. People at the time were likely afraid of nuclear reactors and the dangers of having a power plant nearby due to the relatively recent and severe disaster that had happened. Quicksand as such attacks the power plant, blaming nuclear energy for her mutation, when Thor comes along and stops her. Oddly enough, this wouldn't be the last we'd see of Quicksand either in the comics, or even the last time we'd see her fight Thor. Still, she's pretty obscure.
Number 10. Quasar. Wendell Vaughn was once a run-of-the-mill S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who was placed in charge of guarding the quantum bands until one fateful day that changed his life forever. One day, AIM androids were sent to steal the bands, and William Wesley had unfortunately passed away just an hour before, so in order to protect them, Wendell put them on himself, and thanks to his lack of killer instincts, he was able to not only control the power of the bands, but also defeat the AIM androids. Now, if you're not familiar with the power of the quantum bands, let me give you a bit of a rundown. The quantum bands draw quantum energy from the universe, and specifically it taps into the quantum zone. With this, Quasar is capable of controlling all forms of energy. Now, similar to DC's Green Lantern, he can also use energy to create force fields, armor, and weapons, as well as fly, teleport into the quantum zone, and communicate via radio waves. As a longtime fan of the Avengers, Quasar was honored when Captain America personally invited him to join the team, and as a part of the team, he would go on to fight with them in the Kree/Shi'ar war. Unfortunately, Quasar's duties as the protector of the universe would limit his involvement thereafter though. Check him out in his first appearance as Marvel Boy in 1978's Captain America number 217. Number 9. Mockingbird. Born and raised in San Diego, Barbara Bobby Morse was first introduced as a highly trained S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and sidekick of Kazar. However, it wasn't until much later in the Marvel Team-Up series that Morse began using the Mockingbird alias. Now, she doesn't actually possess any superpowers, however, thanks to being injected by a formula, she was bestowed super strength, enhanced agility, and a regenerative healing factor. Couple all that with her extensive training in both hand-to-hand combat and weaponry, and that is a recipe for a valuable member of the Avengers. Now, after eloping with Hawkeye, the two were notified of the formation of the West Coast Avengers, and several Avengers, including Mockingbird herself, left to join the new squad, and her and Hawkeye served as this cute little motivating force for the team. Skip ahead a bit and we see Hawkeye and Mockingbird train the new Great Lakes Avengers, and then during the wake of the Avengers receiving a United Nations charter, both active teams were actually revamped, and Bobby received only one vote to become an active member of the Great Lakes Avengers and ended up going back to the West Coast Avengers. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to her story, so feel free to check it out for yourself, starting with her first appearance as Mockingbird in 1980's Marvel Team-Up number 95. Number 8. Spectrum. Born and raised in New Orleans, Monica Rambeau gained her powers one day while working for the New Orleans Harbor Police when she was exposed and bombarded by extra-dimensional energy. Now classified as an alpha-level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blasts, alter her appearance, fly, and just a whole lot more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she became friends with many superpowered folks early on and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time, becoming its leader at one point. However, she was forced to step down from the group after way too many injuries. Out of respect for Genus Vell, the son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight, and they are working to keep people safe to this very day. Now, if you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16. Number 7. Wonder Man. One of the Avengers' more troubled team members, the ionic energy-powered superhero Simon Williams, who has a long history with the Avengers that goes all the way back to his debut. Now, Simon inherited his father's company, Williams Innovations, and ended up running it straight into the ground with the help of competition from Stark Industries. He was then later arrested for embezzling funds from the company, giving him a bitter hatred for Iron Man that was then leveraged by the supervillain Baron Zemo as a plot against the Avengers. After being given powers by Zemo, however, Simon betrays him and chooses to fight alongside the team he once fought against. The exact nature of his powers isn't always clear, but regardless, this energy gives his body a massive power up beyond the capabilities of normal humans. One of the powers being, of course, super strength. Wonder Man's strength is said to be on par with Thor and even possibly Sentry, as one time he literally knocked out Thor with just one punch, and this is a result of the experiments by Zemo. Wonder Man is also imbued with ionic energy, giving him super stamina, speed, agility, and then flight and reflexes, as well as making him pretty much indestructible. Wonder Man can also absorb various forms of energy including antimatter, is able to project powerful energy blasts at will, and can even exist as pure energy if he wants to. Perhaps the biggest quirk of his abilities, however, is that he doesn't actually require any food, water, or even oxygen to survive, all thanks to his vast reserves of energy. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1964's Avengers number 9. Number 6. Crystal. The first Inhuman to appear on this list today, Crystal is a part of the royal family of Attilan and was subjected to the Terrigen Mist when she was very young, which gave her some pretty cool mental powers. Put simply, she's just basically the Avatar. She has control over the 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and air, which is done through psionic interactions with the substance on an atomic level. However, these 4 elements aren't where her control ends because she also is capable of electrokinesis, magnetokinesis, thermokinesis, and cryokinesis. During her tenure with the Avengers taking place during the Operation Galactic Storm, she developed an attraction with teammate Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. This relationship was a bit complicated as Pietro was trying to fix their marriage, and the available and aggressive Cersei pursuing Dane at the time as well. Crystal recommitted to Pietro when he returned to the Avengers, and Dane and Cersei were soon transported to another universe, ending their thoughts of an affair completely. Crystal was among the Avengers who seemingly sacrificed themselves to end the menace called Onslaught. Actually transported to a different reality created by Franklin Richards, Crystal was restored when the heroes returned. When the heroes who were believed to be dead returned to Earth, Crystal and Quicksilver were quickly reunited and both helped the Avengers reassemble. Crystal, however, returned to Attilan where she remained beside the royal family, raising Luna. Check out her story for yourself starting with 1965's Fantastic Four, number 45.
Number 5. Triune Understanding. The Triune Understanding was an organization led by Jonathan Tremont. It was originally believed to be an organization focused on maximizing human potential, although it was later revealed to have more sinister motives. Tremont specifically used the organization and its resources to create a smear campaign to be used against the Avengers. He claimed the Avengers were intolerant of various religions and races. He also used his villainous brothers Lord Templar and Pagan in an attack against the Avengers, in which he then blamed the superhero team for all the destruction that the battle had caused. The crazy thing is, although this organization is not one of the well-known Avengers adversaries, the Triune Understanding still succeeded in getting both Thor and Captain America to leave the team for a time.
Number 4. Sons of the Serpent. Now over the years there have been a total of 7 iterations of the Sons of the Serpent, so let's make our way through all of them, shall we? This group was initially formed by General Chen, and let's just say they were all about doing some pretty awful things against non-natives of their country. The original group was disbanded by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers after they unmasked General Chen as their leader. And then the second group didn't show up until a little bit while later, but they were also quickly defeated and disbanded by the Avengers and Black Panther. Financed by J.C. Pennyworth, the third iteration was all about destroying buildings in Harlem, but the Defenders had no trouble stopping them. Head over to LA after and you'd find the fourth iteration selling drugs and weapons under the leadership of the Hate Monger. Thankfully, War Machine shut them down for good and cut off all of their suppliers as well. The fifth iteration was super into magic and mysticism and led by Serpent Man himself, however it's actually unknown if they were ever stopped, so honestly they could be practicing to this very day. The six Sons of the Serpent controlled New York's justice system for a period of time, and they would have been a much bigger threat had they not been stopped by Daredevil. And then finally, the seventh iteration of the team went back to their roots and were patrolling the American border, not letting anyone into the country unless they were a citizen. Not only that though, they were also sending some of these immigrants to Carl Malice as test subjects. Thankfully though, Captain America caught wind of this and their villainous ways were put to an end.
Number 3. Chaos King. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is the Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the Epic Fear itself in terms of Marvel chronological print history, and it kind of became overshadowed by it. Ultimately, it also felt a lot less planned out. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikoboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War, where he was defeated. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his powers to reverse the effects of life and death, meaning the dead heroes came back to life, while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong, while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in origin though, when it came to their magic type.
Number 2. The Circus of Crime. Now much like the Sons of the Serpent, the Circus of Crime has gone through many iterations, but let's just focus on the modern eras this time. Currently composed of the Ringmaster aka Maynard Tybalt, Bruto the Strongman, Clown, Tina the Fat Lady, and the Fire Eater, the Circus of Crime is kind of exactly what you'd expect after hearing their name. A circus that does crime. They followed a general formula while committing their crimes. They would give a performance before a large audience, then at some point, the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device concealed in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members would then rob the audience, who wouldn't remember anything about the thefts when the ringmaster released them from the trance, and then the performance would just continue. They clashed with superheroes on a pretty regular basis, the most notable being the Hulk, Spider-Man, and of course the Avengers. Funnily enough though, one time Matt Murdock himself offered to defend them in court after having helped defeat them alongside Spider-Man. Crazy.
Number 1. Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew is a villainous entourage who appear as blue-collar sort of construction workers. In reality, they are Dirk Garthwaite, who was originally Wrecker, and his team comprised of Thunderbell, aka Elliot Franklin, previously a physicist, Bulldozer, previously a military sergeant known as Henry Camp, Pile Driver, aka Brian Kaluski, who used to be a farmer. They received their powers when they all came into contact with the crowbar as it was struck by some kind of magical lightning. They have attempted to take hold of the Avengers Mansion on more than one occasion, teaming up with the Masters of Evil during one of their attempts and kidnapping Misty Knight and using her to control Iron Fist another time. They are usually handily defeated by the Avengers when they go up against the team, however. It seems that magical construction equipment and mystical abilities, which are tied to that equipment, is not really enough to defeat the Avengers, I guess.